Welcome to Radio OPAC. Radio OPAC is a weekly conversation series at the intersection of the arts and the justice system, a weekly dose of art and humanity. And it's a program of Ohio Prison Arts Connection, which is a network of people around our state who are committed to bringing people together with art inside and outside of prisons. And I am so excited to be here with our guest, Wendy Jason of the Justice Arts Coalition. Hello, Wendy, hooray.
Hello, Jessie. Hooray.
I'm so glad to be
here with you.
I'm so glad to be here with you, and I'm so glad to be with all of you joining us on Facebook. I also want to welcome all of those of you who are watching inside of Ohio prisons. If you are incarcerated in Ohio prisons, so glad that you are getting a chance to experience this interview alongside of us. So Wendy.
Hi.
Hi. You are the director of the Justice Arts Coalition.
And so they tell me. Yes, I am.
Right. You keep every day you get reminded of this. So I would love if you could just start by telling us about Justice Arts Coalition. What is at the heart of this national work, and what's important to you about it?
All right, I will try to get to the heart of it. So Justice Arts Coalition is a national network, a national community really, made up of people who care deeply about ensuring access to arts engagement for people inside of prisons and jails and other carceral institutions. We are teaching artists, we are formerly incarcerated artists, we are people whose loved ones are incarcerated, we're advocates and activists and allies, and Justice Arts Coalition is really at its core all about strengthening and building relationships among and between those people, and most importantly, among people outside and inside of prison. So much of what we do is focused on using the arts as really a bridge to connect people inside and outside of prison. And we do that in multiple ways, but really always remembering that at the core of this is relationships, and that art, creative expression is really just kind of a vehicle to create connection between people.
That's really, and what you're describing is of course really close to my heart. So much of what you're saying is very core to the mission of Ohio Prison Arts Connection as well. You're doing it on a different scale, and with some different tactics, right? But I'm curious if you could speak a little bit more. You said really at the heart of Justice Arts Coalition, or JAC, is relationships, building relationships and using art as the platform to do that. And I'd love to hear you speak to just why that's important. What is it that is possible when those relationships get formed?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about how those relationships result in us investing in each other, and caring about each other and each other's well-being. And feeling as though we matter, right? And we exist in the world. So, you know, from my own experience working inside and with folks inside, and being in correspondence with folks inside throughout much of my life, I think I had my first friend in prison was a pen pal who I started writing to in, I think it was 9th grade. That was a long time ago. Just understanding and really connecting with how vital that sense of connectedness to someone on the outside can be, and just how much it is like affirming of the humanity, the meaning in people's lives, the identity and value and worth of folks who are in prison and who have had so much stripped away from them. So having my own experience with that, through having pen pals, and then also facilitating a creative writing program in a jail for a while in New Mexico, just really, really seeing how too, the arts can really be the, kind of the connective tissue that brings us together. When I started facilitating this creative writing group, I actually had no experience creative writing myself. I had no idea, like I still can't.
Wow.
Um, I had never taught writing. I really had no idea like how to go about doing that. What I knew was how to be in community with people and like how to build trust and how to show up in a way that fostered trust. And I believed that like the creative writing, if we're doing this together, can really just be like the way that we open up to each other. And if I can if that can happen, then so much more can happen, right? And that kind of proved to be true in this group that I led.
It sounds like it was like the seed that has informed a lot of the approach that you've taken with Justice Arts Coalition.
Yeah, and I think that was too like really at the heart of the work when it started. So Justice Arts Coalition, as I think you know, started out as something called the Prison Arts Coalition, and folks who developed it, not me, back in 2008, were a group of like veteran teaching artists from different parts of the country, who really saw the power that like art could be as a tool to connect people. And that was like really their whole impetus for starting this website, is like, how do we keep people connected to this work? And so starting it online, and Jack then down the road many years has, you know, our goal is to really bring that out into community, bring it more into prisons, so that these circles of community that we have on the outside and now on the inside can be linked.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it connects to something that we were talking about before we turned the camera on around isolation, right? That there are a lot of elements of this kind of work that can be isolating. And I've known about your work and the work of Justice Arts Coalition for quite a while now, really since 2017, but really have gotten to see things get popping in a new way during COVID, which is itself kind of coming out of isolation. And so I'd love for you to speak to just what's been happening with Justice Arts Coalition since the start of COVID.
Yeah, you know, it's so interesting that you bring up the piece about isolation, because I think we're quick, you know, for those of us who are involved in this work, like we know how isolating the experience of being incarcerated can be. Many of us don't know it from experience. I don't know it from experience, but having been connected, you know, with so many folks inside, and being inside and out, you know, going inside and out, we know that. We don't think as much necessarily about, like you just kind of got me thinking about just how Justice Arts Coalition in a way is bringing together all of these individuals and groups of people who are in their own ways, even pre-COVID, feeling very isolated, right? So teaching artists who work inside of prisons, anyone you talk to who's done this work for quite some time will say it actually is incredibly solitary work and incredibly isolating work, because there are so few people who can relate to the kinds of challenges that it poses. And then, you know, we also work with obviously like family members of folks who are incarcerated, loved ones of folks who are incarcerated, you know, folks who have been incarcerated. Still very, you know, can be a very lonely experience with very few people to relate to, you know, to find support from who can connect to that experience. And then I'm thinking about like folks like us, right? Like administrators of these programs, who many times are like super under-resourced and super under-supported in our work. And that too is this experience of can be very isolating. And then we bring this pandemic into the mix.
Oh my gosh. And some of the same things that affect people in Maryland, where you are, affect us in Ohio and in South Dakota and Missouri. Sure. You know, we are facing a lot of the same challenges. And what I've seen Justice Arts Coalition do in such an interesting way is bring people together because of COVID, because we all are sort of hungry for that kind of connection. So hungry that we're willing to spend hours on Zoom.
Right, so hungry for it. And so that's so at the start of the pandemic, back in March, you know, I heard about obviously all of the lockdowns that were happening across the country in prisons, and you know, realizing, oh my gosh, this means that all of these teaching artists that I've been in touch with, you know, in different ways over the years, no longer have access to can no longer run their programs. How are they, like, I wonder how they're doing. What does this mean for them? And so I was like, what's the, this Zoom, there's this Zoom thing that we can bring people together on virtually. I wonder what would happen if I just kind of put a call out. We have really big mailing lists that have been kind of built over the years. People have signed up for them, at past conferences and signed up online. So they're like these really, pretty significant mailing lists. So I shot a note, out to one of the mailing lists and was like, hey, I'm guessing that this is a really hard time. Like, if this feels like a really hard time, right? Let's get together. We don't, a lot of us don't know each other, but let's see what happens if we get together. And I offered up like an evening on Zoom.
Yeah. And it's kind of amazing what can happen with simply a consistent night of the week. So many people, there's been so much, a surge of momentum has been built around all kinds of different efforts, advocacy, fundraising, research,
creating new programs. So I mean, when we started these weekly meetings, it kind of felt like a support group. Everybody was just everyone was spinning. Everyone, was so kind of at a loss for what to do. Programs had just been, cut, done, you're done, you can't get it. Right. There was no programming happening. Nobody had any idea when they'd be able to get back inside. People were worried sick about their, the folks inside that they were working with, their students. They didn't know, what their status was. We saw these waves of, COVID going into the prisons. We were hearing that people were getting sick, people were dying, and it was just really, really hard. People like the teaching artists and some also too, like formerly incarcerated folks that were showing up to our calls were just like, there was a sense of like real hopelessness. And they just needed to be together and kind of support and like hear and support one another. But what happened was that the energy really quickly shifted. Once they felt that support, that energy quickly shifted to, okay, so what are we going to do? Like, what are we going to do about this?
Right.
And the ideas started bubbling up. And next thing we know, people are figuring out ways to launch these distance learning programs, correspondence programs. People are starting to use video to program. And more, it's been amazing to watch how over the summer, like dozens and dozens of these programs have popped up.
Yes.
That I don't think any of us would have really envisioned this happening back in March.
No, it's like a whole new set of possibilities has opened up, and people who are already, designed to be creative, are putting all of that creativity to use to try to.
And I think their like ability to do that is coming from being, first of all, like inspired by one another, because we're also hosting now calls and happen for the past couple of months where folks can share their curricula, talk about it, ask each other questions about it. So people are building off of each other's ideas, but ultimately it's just about feeling connected and supported, right? Which is what we all need. And is what Justice Arts Coalition is wanting for all of the folks inside who are in our network. So we have like 300 incarcerated artists who write to us regularly, send us their artwork regularly. We pair them with, we have an art space pen pal program that we pair folks through. And we have all of these different ways that we're connecting them with folks on the outside, and that's it. Like, we all just need to feel seen and heard and supported. And look what can happen when we do.
Look what can happen. Look what has already been made possible. And I'm curious about what your hopes are. What do you see coming on the horizon? What do you see that might be possible in 6 months that may not be possible now?
Oh man. Well, I'm excited about this little conference that we're planning.
Tell me more.
You don't know anything about that. So
pretending not to know.
So we've put together a team of folks, of which you are one, who is working together on planning a national conference around kind of all things related to the intersection of the arts and justice. I'm excited about figuring out ways to make sure that people in prison are included in the planning of that, and in really all aspects of that conference. We were talking about that a little bit in the planning meeting this afternoon. Something that really excites me, and like Justice Arts Coalition, we're still really young. We are bare bones. We are 99.9% volunteer run still at this point. We're doing a whole ton of stuff with like next to nothing. And so a lot of what I have to think about getting excited about is just like build like these little tiny building blocks of like, oh, I get really excited about the idea of being able to hire someone or like hire myself. I don't know, like that's really exciting to
all of
me.
those little things are meaningful, you know, when you're building a new organization of any kind. And
Yeah, so we can do
this
what we do
environment,
a lot better and from a
yeah.
lot more like stable ground, right? Like that feels so, so important. I'm really interested in diving more into where Justice Arts Coalition fits within like the within movement work. So within like the transformative justice movements and kind of the abolition movement, and just kind of see, like feeling that out a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's, I have a lot of curiosity around that. My background is a little bit in like restorative practices, restorative justice, and I'm really wanting to integrate that more into the work that Justice Arts Coalition does, and gear us more towards like envisioning what our role is in, you know, in down the road, like building this new world without prisons. Because I feel like artists have a very important role to play in that, right, as the visionaries behind it,
the imaginers of futures that don't exist yet, right? And so I love that you've just sort of spoken not only to the incredibly concrete, seemingly mundane, very important elements of hoping for support, while also casting this big vision about a transformed future. And I'm really excited to be both witness to and a part of where Justice Arts Coalition is going. So thank you so much, Wendy. We end every Radio OPAC session with a moment of reflection on a piece of art selected by our guest. We do because we need to share arts experiences, and we know that people go away from this opportunity to reflect on art and other opportunities to reflect on art throughout this pandemic with sort of refreshed perspective and renewed energy. So Wendy, you're going to share something with us.
I am, and this is very difficult for me because, as I told you, Jessie, like I am surrounded here. For a long time, my apartment served as our art storage space. So I am like, there's just amazing artwork everywhere. So it was a little hard for me to choose. And I have a lot of pieces that are very, very dear to my heart, and many that were gifted to me and just have a lot of personal value to me. And I'm going to share with you Sam Loynachan's little bird sketch here. So Sam wrote to Jack before we were Jack, while we still were Prison Arts Coalition, probably about, I think it was about 2 years ago now, at which point it was just me managing everything. And this was one of the first, this might have been the first or the second piece of artwork that he sent. He had learned about us through his mother because he decided that he was going to teach himself to draw. He had no art background whatsoever. And he wanted to focus on drawing birds. So his mom would send him, I think they were like rip-offs from like one of those little bird, like a day-to-day calendar, and pictures out of a bird magazine or something. And he was going to teach himself to draw by drawing birds. So this was like very, very early Sam. And so it's been such an honor and so much fun to watch Sam's birds develop over the last couple of years. Wow. We paired Sam with, so our arts-based pen pal program is called the Partner Project, P, capital A, capital R, capital T, NER project. We paired him with a partner who is an avid artist as well. So I have here, I'm going to share my screen real quick and show you one of his more recent pieces. There are so many, and it's hard for me to choose which one to show you, but I love this one. So can you see?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So there's one of Sam's more recent birds. In fact, I mean, because I'm on this, I can show you, just scroll through. He's recently started working with watercolor. I love this one too. See, now I can't just show you one, Jessie.
I know, it's like what's so amazing about this is seeing the journey and the focus and the growth of an artist over time. And
It's such a joy.
I love that. I love the attention to detail
Yeah.
and development. That's extraordinary.
Something, and just another little anecdote about Sam is that
Yeah.
because it was his mom who connected him with us, I've been in touch with her all along as well. And at one point about a year ago, they started doing collaborative pieces. And she had no art background whatsoever either. And she would write to me and she'd be like, I can't draw for beans. I don't know why he's making me do this. But he sent me, you know, he would start a picture, send it to her, and she would add to it, send it back, and they would send it back and forth. And then they would share with me their finished products, which were just, it was so much fun. And so it brought them closer together.
And that feels and it feels like it brings us right back to what you were describing at the beginning, the heart of Justice Arts Coalition, of finding that opportunity to grow relationships around the excuse of, or the platform of art, its own good, but also developing that relational good. Thank you so much, Wendy. What a joy to talk to you today.
Thank you, Jessie.
Thank you. And thanks everybody for joining us
out there.
On Facebook. I wanted to mention on Facebook in the comments, we'll be providing all kinds of links where you can learn more about Justice Arts Coalition, find out about all of the COVID specific and not COVID specific projects, and even get involved. So thank you so much. Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. Sending love to everyone inside there in Ohio.
Thank you.
Stuck in our way. We're gonna make it happen. Do it today.